Hi YouTube! I wanted to post a really quick video because I'm making what I call my poor man's cap molds right now. It is a very simple, easy, kind of messy, not really precise way of making dice molds, but it is very simple and easy, and it's how I make all of my blank molds because they can be a little messy and it's not as important as my actual dice molds. And because it's such a quick and easy mold style, I figured I'd show you really quickly, so let's do it! Most of the materials that you need for these molds should be pretty easy to get your hands on and pretty inexpensive. You'll need some form of mold release. For me, that's a big old tub of Vaseline. It's cheap, it's easy, and it works. So I use Vaseline. Some people use like baby powder and other forms of mold release. Whatever you have, you should try. Otherwise, I recommend Vaseline. You'll also need, I use a paintbrush, but something to smear it around your molds. You could just use your fingers, I guess, if you're going really cheap and easy. So I guess you don't need a paintbrush, never mind. Instead, you'll need some sort of housing. You don't need a super professional mold housing. I'm using the cardboard box that my master dice came in because it's a good size. It's a good box, and it'll work, and I have it, and it was free. So we have our mold release, and then we have our mold housing. You will, of course, also need whatever you're molding. For me, in this instance, it's this see? Lovely little handful of master blanks. There's a bigger one, easier one to show. Whatever you're molding, you'll need. You will need some sort of measuring cup for your silicone, which you will also need. You'll need some form of silicone. I like Dragon Skin 10 medium. Use whatever you like. And then something to mix it with. Just know if you are using, back on the floor, something like a butter knife with your silicone, this you can't use for food anymore unless you're using food grade silicone. Then it's fine. Okay, now that we have our silicone, a measuring cup, and something to mix it with, which you can also just use the classic popsicle stick. Literally, whatever you have, that'll work. Just don't put it in your mouth again unless you're using food grade silicone. Then the only other thing that you'll need is something to create what we call indicator marks, or that's what I've always heard it called. For me, that is clay. I just make little marks out of clay. You can use craft crystals, rhinestones, drops of UV resin if you have UV resin. And if you don't have anything to use, you can also cut in your indicator marks after the fact. So ideally, you'll have some little thing that you can use for your indicator marks. If you don't, you'll just have to cut them in with like an X-Acto knife. Yeah. Then we're just gonna prep our mold housing with whatever release, again for me, Vaseline on a paintbrush. Don't be skimpy. And just brush it all over, all sides of whatever mold housing you're using. This will just help that silicone pop right out with pretty much no trouble. Then I'm just gonna start putting my dice in. You can kind of see I've already laid them out in pattern over here, so just kind of popping them in. They'll stick pretty well to the Vaseline. Arrange them however you like. Then I'm using little bits of clay to form these little balls and make indicator marks around the mold. Just kind of everywhere, really. Putting down these little blobs until we have them all over the place. Then we just need to go ahead and measure out some amount of silicone. I don't know how much. I always just kind of look and guess. And I don't know if I should do 6 or 8 for this one, but maybe we stop at 6. We'll figure it out. And then once our silicone's in here, we're just gonna mix it for a few minutes till it's gonna combined. It's pretty simple. Okay, and once our silicone is all mixed, we're just gonna pour it into the mold. Slow and steady wins the race. Let's try not to drip on my desk mat. Anyway, now that we have poured the silicone, it is time for this to cure in the pressure pot. It's the next morning, so we will start releasing pressure from our pot. All right, now that I am free of my dog, we can just pop this mold right out. It shouldn't be too hard because we Vaselined the side of the box, but I also don't want to rip the box because I want to reuse it if I can. They're just a really good shape for my blank molds. We pop that bad boy out. Oh dear. Anyway, as I was saying, totally professionally, pop that bad boy out, and here's what the top of our mold looks like. Ta-da! And I just like to wipe the top down a little bit, and the sides, I guess, with some isopropyl alcohol. We will be adding more Vaseline to the top, so this is an optional step. I just find it easier to then start popping out these little indicator marks and cleaning up the face. Now I'm just going to work on cleaning up the faces of these dice. I like to do this, I should be using my camera hand, not my non-camera hand. I like to do this just kind of scratching along the edges of most of them. I find that this works really well. But anywhere where there's a lot of silicone overlapping, like up here, you can take an X-Acto knife and just cut along that edge to remove that excess silicone. So like with this D20 here, just going to use my X-Acto to lightly cut along these edges. And because these are blanks, I'm not too worried about cutting the face of the die, especially because they are matte blanks. So we'll just go along cleaning up the mold like this until I am happy with everything. Now that the mold is clean and I am happy with it, it is time to go back in with mold release. Mine, again, is Vaseline. And then I'm just going to spread this across the top of this mold, but I don't want to spread it across the actual die faces. Because these are blanks, I probably could and it would be fine. Make sure you get into all of your little indicator holes as well. We want our silicone releasing from these holes, not getting stuck into them. And apply your mold release everywhere. Be generous. You can be pretty liberal with it. And yeah, just try to avoid the die faces if you can, especially if you're doing blanks. If a little bit gets on them, it is no big deal at all. And I do also just go around the sides because the silicone from our cap might fall down a bit along the sides, and if so, it's easier to have this top half release rather than to have to cut it loose. So usually what I do to contain the lid is I tape around all of the sides and around the bottom to make like a little cage. But I think we can just kind of pop this back into the box maybe, and then pour silicone on top. Let's see. Worth a try. It's so slippery from the Vaseline. Yeah, get in there, little guy. Get in there. Get on up. And still doing the Vaseline along the sides will help us here. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can't wiggle this little fella all the way down here into its box. Got the mold, I think, all the way done into this little box. And I'm just gonna add more Vaseline around the sides of the box to try to help our eventual lid of this mold release, especially in these corners. The silicone will probably get up under this little darker bit of cardboard, but we should just be able to pull or cut it out if that happens, and it shouldn't damage the mold. So let's pour our silicone. And it's a matter of pouring silicone, grabbing a knife, or whatever you like to use, and going back to the mix. And then we can pour. That's the fun part. Once our silicone is all mixed, we can slowly start to pour it to form the cap. And you do want the caps to be a little bit thick. If you go super thin, There will probably be issues you run into with your cap lifting or not being able to push all of the resin down, so don't worry about your cap being too thick, but do worry about it being too thin. We're just going to pour probably until it hits these lower little dark corners, and then call that a cap there. Lovely. All right, good morning. It is the next day. Theo's here to say hello again, and I have my mold. Our mold, really. We did this. I have our mold. I also have this other little small mold, do it Beauty Guru style, to show you what I mean when I say I tape around the mold so I can pour the cap. But we didn't make that together, so you probably don't care about it. Still, in case you were wondering what that taping process looks like, if it's a circle, it looks like this. But we can pop this out of its box now. Okay, after a little bit of a struggle, we've got our mold out of the box. I haven't done anything to it. This little judger is here judging me. We get to peel. And anywhere it's getting kind of stuck, I just avoid for now because I want to take a look at those areas rather than just ripping the silicone loose. But I think it'll all come off. Looks like one of my indicator marks is being, oh, there it goes. Ta-da! And we have a mold base with our master still in there, and a mold cap. So just to finish up here, I know this video was pretty silly, but I did have a lot of fun filming it, so hopefully it was also maybe a little fun or entertaining to watch. I'm just going to go ahead and pop the masters now out of this mold, and then this video will be complete. Again, these molds aren't incredibly neat. I will also wipe down the top once again with some isopropyl alcohol to take off any of that remaining Vaseline, but this mold style works. It's really easy. I've always been able to make it essentially just using items that I already have in my house, so I don't have to go out and buy a bunch of extra stuff, and consequently, this has been how I've been making my basic little cap molds for the last almost 4 years now. Again, it's not pretty, it's not neat, but it sure does do the job using things I already have. And I like that. All right, with that, I believe that's all I have for this video. Again, obviously, not my usual video style. I am not used to having to record myself or talk in a camera or look at footage back going, oh, I was making that horrible face that entire time, but hopefully it was fun, you enjoyed, maybe you even learned something, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!